Callum still loves Rayla. Depending on one's perspective, this is either not surprising at all, or it is extremely surprising. Not surprising at all because his growing love for Rayla has been a significant thread linking together his character throughout these 4 seasons of the show. That love has grown inside him along with his confidence, his sense of self-assuredness, his belief in himself, and his belief in the goal that he is committed to, the goal of a new world, a world without the biases of the past, without its prejudices, without the obstacles of those who say that elves and humans are doomed forever to be in conflict. When Rayla leaves him, it is a blow because it's a relationship he deeply cares about, but it is also a blow because it damages that greater vision, that greater sense of confidence, that greater sense of certainty that he wants, that the world can be made better, that it does not have to simply repeat the patterns that have gone on in the past, that it is possible through determination and thoughtfulness to create a new ethic, a new sense of what the world can be. On the other hand, that Callum continues loving her is extremely surprising because he has not known her for a very long time. That in itself would not be so significant, except that the show decides to take a significant time skip between Season 3 and Season 4. That means that while he only knew her for a very short amount of time, relatively speaking, he nonetheless continued pining after her for years on end, despite being a teenager, despite, it is presumed, growing up and establishing new opinions and new perspectives on the world, and casting aside some older and more childish viewpoints. It would have been the easiest thing in the world for him to fall in love again. Claudia, of all people, falls in love in these 2 years. Why not Callum? Claudia was trapped in a cave in the middle of nowhere, surrounded by only Erebos and the stigma of being a traitor, of siding with Viren and his army of dark magic zombies against the betterment of both the elves and the humans. She fundamentally committed treason of sorts by attempting to kill Ezrin, and yet she's unrepentant. She lingers in those feelings of bitterness and resentment and a sense of profound elegiac loss for the life that she once had, and even so, she manages to fall in love. Callum doesn't, and I think that's significant. He still hopes that Rayla will come back, even though, reasonably, and Callum does think of himself as a more reasonable person than a lot of the prejudiced elves and humans he comes into contact with, he continues believing that she will someday return. And he's right, and she does, but that gap of time, those years gone, still sting. That his longing for her was finally brought to a sense of resolution and catharsis does not detract from the pain that longing caused him. We do not fully feel the absurdity of Callum's situation, because for us it's just a gap from Season 3 to Season 4, and however long that gap felt in real-world time, in the time of binge-watching the show, it's not long at all, but for Callum it is. It's 2 years. There's something ludicrous about that, and in the domain of love, that's not innately a bad thing. Love can be ludicrous. It can be wild and confusing and unexpected. That does not mean it should be thrown away entirely. Love is about paradoxes, it's about enigmas, it's about, in a way, knowing that what you're feeling is a bit ridiculous, and yet having such a passion, such a determination, that you compel yourself to embrace these feelings anyway. One of my professors at Columbia, Eric Gray, talked about this quite a bit in the classes I've had with him, and in a wonderful book he wrote about love poetry and the paradoxes and conflicts inevitably resulting from it. He talks about a great Tennyson poem, Mariana, which is about, in a way, this same conflict, knowing that the desired catharsis will not arrive, will not fully bring satisfaction, and yet locking oneself into that yearning for it. Or, to name another great example he brings up, Merlin in The Idylls of the King, another great Tennyson poem. Merlin knows, he has foreseen, that love is going to be a downfall for him. It is going to be the complete degradation of all these grandiose images and narratives he constructs about himself as this master wizard beyond the reach of enchantment and guile. He knows that. He knows he's falling into a trap, and yet he still chooses it anyway. Is that foolish? Yes. Is it paradoxical? Yes, of course. Is it nonetheless befitting what love is and can be? Also, yes. Now, the show is ambiguous on whether Callum's love is a good thing. The show is positive for the most part, and I believe that as it progresses, it will lean more toward, yes, this love is good. I would think it highly improbable that it doesn't do that, considering how closely this relationship is tied to the show's overall perspective on the dynamic between the elves and the humans and the difficulty of repairing the rift between them and building the foundation of a brighter future for both species. But Season 4 does a lot to complicate and undermine this easy, sentimental glory and satisfaction that we get in the first 3 seasons of the show in terms of this relationship. The best kinds of love, going all the way back to Plato, can be transformative. This is not merely love as pure passion, pure animalistic lust. For Plato, love in its highest form, its truest form, allows for the turn away from the mere contemplation of these individual sparks of passion and toward a greater sense of understanding, a greater appreciation of that which is beautiful and that which is true. This is what is actually platonic love. It is not simply non-romantic love, and Plato would honestly probably be quite offended to see the narrow valence of platonic love nowadays. But no, for Plato, what love is the purification of yearning, of desire from mere caprice, from mere passing fancy. It is the ascension of the spirit toward the wonders of that which is beautiful and spiritual and mystical. That does not necessarily mean it loses its physical character. That's important. And we see this as what I will call begrudgingly the Western tradition develops, we see St. Augustine take this Platonic conception of love and kind of merge it together with Christianity. And that tradition climaxes in Dante. For Dante, this love for the beloved person that is gone, this object of affection, Beatrice, is human love. It is passionate, but it is more than that. It is contrasted against these base, banal forms of lust and toward this elevated spiritual conception of love. And following that love, following that purest form of love, can lead one to a greater sense of understanding. However, that ideal conception of love is not always one that lines up with our actual realities. It's hard to find the best kind of love, and it's hard to differentiate it from these so-called base kinds of love. In the actual world, everything is mixed up together, and it's hard to make these clear differentiations. Sartre talks a lot about this ideal of love and how difficult it is to line that up to our actual experience in the world, and how often it's merely a projection that is innately unstable. It dissolves when the other person refuses to share in it. Nausea is a great example of this, one of Sartre's brilliant novels. There is the protagonist who is clinging to this grasping attempt to create a sense of stability, a sense of certainty, a sense of absolute clarity for himself, burying himself in history books and attempting to latch on to a basic, unchanging, unceasing, fixed conception of who he is and what his relation to the world around him is. That is his goal, and it is gradually undermined throughout the course of the novel. Most daringly, devastatingly exemplified in a scene where he tries to get back together with a past love. And this is not merely romantic caprice, it is that, but it's also the attempt to form this sense of shared understanding, this shared sense of a past and a future. And she has changed. She's not the person he knew, and she doesn't share his rosy conception of their past or his limited idea of what their future together could be. He eventually has to understand that this elevated, metaphysical idea of love is ultimately not one that necessarily corresponds to the world in which we live in, a world of fleeting impressions that can be dizzying, that can be difficult to truly comprehend. The difficulty of attaining a sense of meaning, a sense of purpose, a sense of basic coherent identity is not made easy by the much mystified, romanticized presence of love. And yet, a fallen human love, imperfect and profane in the original sense of that term, meaning simply not divine, not in the sense of vulgar. Perhaps that rather human, rather mundane sense of love is all we have, and perhaps that's still worth fighting for. Callum still believes it is. He needs this relationship. It gives him a fundamental sense of identity. It gives him a fundamental sense of connection in a time when he doesn't really have a clear sense of how to navigate his relationships with others. He feels cast adrift from them. We'll see how he responds going forward. So anyway, thank you all for watching. If you liked what you saw today, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Donate to my Patreon if you can, and you want to see more videos just like this one. Before anyone else, keep watching The Dragon Prince. Season 4 is interesting. I have a lot of appreciation for it. It does a lot of really fascinating things, and I can't wait to see where the show goes from here. Anyway, tune in soon for my next analysis. It will be coming soon, promise you that. Thank you all again. Adios, comrades.